Christian Parenting.
Welcome to Called to Love, where we discuss all things adoption and foster care and dive into the practical, the clinical, and most importantly, the biblical perspectives to help you and your family thrive. I'm Summer Colbert, adoptive mom, director of adoption and foster ministry, and champion for the Arkansas Baptist Children and Family Ministries. Adoption isn't just a process. It is an invitation to go on a journey with the Lord where you will experience life-changing opportunities to grow in your faith and learn to love in an entirely new way. One thing is for sure, being called to love means you will never be the same. Welcome back, sweet families, to the Called to Love podcast. I am so grateful that you are joining me for this new series on mindful parenting. And specifically, we are going to be diving today's episode into the attachment styles. So I am so grateful to welcome back to this episode, Kelly Hamilton. Kelly, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. We've given an overview on attachment and just the benefits and all of the just intricacies, I think, and then just the importance of attachment. And so I want to get specific today. And you had mentioned in our last episode that there are 4 attachment styles. So let's go through each one of those. And as I learned from you in our session at CAFO, you were talking about the strengths of those attachment styles. And then there are some weaknesses with those attachment styles. And so we're going to get really honest. So parents, get ready to be self-reflective. And I want to challenge you, maybe as we get started, Kelly, maybe you'll echo this a little bit, but as we've talked about mindfulness, it starts with us and being aware. So it might be a little tempting to go start talking about, oh, that's your spouse's attachment style or that's your kid's attachment style. But I think it's helpful for us to start with ourselves, and then we can kind of have those conversations with our people and identify attachment style and how we can work together as a family unit. So Kelly, where do we begin with attachment styles?
Okay, so yes, so there are 4 different attachment styles. You have secure, you have anxious, avoidant, and then disorganized. And disorganized is kind of a combo of avoidant and anxious. So, and I think you are right. You know, when we are being self-reflective on what is our attachment style, I think we have to have a lot of grace for ourselves and say, okay, this isn't something that's saying, oh, you're a bad parent or you're a bad person.
Great
This
point.
is really just showing, like, where are we responding from? It's so important to understand our personal attachment style because it does affect how we parent and
Yeah.
how we engage in any relationship with our spouse. My husband and I talk a lot about our attachment styles as spouses and in our marriage. So it's really just a point of reference to start at, of give yourself grace no matter what your attachment style is. My default is not a secure attachment, so I'm going to tell myself it's okay. Like, it's
Same.
okay, whatever
Yeah,
it may be.
that's a great point. Well, solidarity in that, sister.
Oh my goodness, yes. So do you want to start with secure attachment?
Let's start there.
Okay, so a securely attached person. In this relationship, the 2 individuals will feel seen, safe, soothed, and secure. And so they know that they are able to find comfort in this relationship. They know that they can trust this person. They know that they can ask for help without fear of a negative response from the other person.
Mhm.
So when our kids are securely attached to us, they can ask for help, knowing that we are going to be there to help them.
Yeah.
When we ask for help with someone else, if we're secure, we feel okay asking for help and knowing that if we ask for help, that's not going to rupture the relationship.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Securely attached individuals also have a great sense of interdependence with others. They feel like they don't have to be there all the time in order to maintain the relationship. They
That's
can have their own hobbies, they can have other relationships. That doesn't threaten the relationship that we're discussing.
Mm,
And I think that's big because oftentimes we hold on so tight because we think we have to maintain a relationship.
right.
That's not securely attached. That's
Mhm.
anxious attachment.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a balance with the person who's securely attached, that they have a trust of others in the relationship, but also a belief in self. Like, they have this balance of having a healthy view of themselves that they are capable, that they are able to manage their emotions, ask for help and what they need, but they also have a balance of a healthy perspective of others, that others are able to help meet their needs, and others are able to kind of be reciprocal in the relationship. Emotionally, physically, whatever that may be, there's a give and take there, that there is a lot of trust. Yeah.
Okay. I gotta ask this question as you're describing this because, like, that to me epitomizes like your arrival point. Like, I mean, like, that's perfect. Like, that's the ideal. That's what we all want. Is that anybody's default?
Um, so about statistically, if we go into statistics,
Yeah.
so there is about 50% of the general population would say that they are securely attached,
Okay.
that they are reporting that they're securely attached.
Right.
When it comes to foster and adoptive parents, that drops to about 25%.
Okay.
So, oftentimes, those that are in helping either professions or even helping, like, hey, I want to serve others and become a foster or adoptive parent, it
Yeah.
usually comes from a place of hurt and our own personal stories, that we're trying
Mhm.
to help others not experience what we experienced.
Oh, wow. That's a great point.
Yeah. So oftentimes, foster and adoptive parents actually have statistically have a higher rate to either have anxious, avoidant, or disorganized attachment.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. That's really amazing to me because I mean, it makes so much sense as I have learned from you and I have learned more about attachment. I have my default is not secure attachment. And I was raised by two parents who did not have secure attachment. They both came from abusive situations from their parents. And so they worked really, really hard to make it their mission that that would not be how I was raised. And they're amazing parents. They're fantastic. But I was parented out of fear. There was a lot of control. There were a lot of different things. And then that affected my attachment style. And so it's just amazing how that, I don't know, like trickles down, I guess you would say,
Absolutely.
with the best of intentions, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's our goal, but yet we're broken humans and we do broken, hurtful things.
Absolutely. And I think we have to have so much grace in that.
Yeah.
But then I also think we have to have grace in us and saying, okay, I need to be mindful and recognize that that's where I'm starting from.
Yeah.
And then I need to do some work to
Right.
move towards secure attachment, to heal from my own pain, my own trauma,
Yeah.
so that we can be a whole person just
Mm.
for ourselves, but
Yeah.
that we can be that parent for our kids.
Yeah.
Um, we are not striving for perfection.
Right.
That's not the end goal.
That's right.
It is really a movement towards secure
Mhm.
relationships.
Mm.
And it's just that movement towards it.
Yeah.
We're never going to arrive to this perfection, and we shouldn't
Right.
even strive for that.
That's
We
good.
should be set, our goal should be to be mindful of how we are responding in our relationships and how we can pivot to ensure that we are responding in ways that build security, safety, and, loving connection.
That's very life-giving. I think what you just said, that it is a constant process of moving towards that rather than, "Okay, I've achieved it, check." Because,
Done.
I mean, there's gonna be I mean, life just has a way of dysregulating you. Life has a way of hurting you. Life has a way I mean, we're affected by the lives that we live and the people that we encounter and the experiences that we have, and so we can always make a choice to be mindful and move towards that secure attachment. I
Yeah.
think is just so fantastic. Okay, what's the
Yeah.
next style?
Well, and I want to hit on one thing before we move to the next style is
Sure.
that it's also important that we do this oftentimes with our kids watching, and
Yeah,
intentionally do that, because
yeah,
we want them to know, hey guys, life is not perfect. You
right,
are going to be disappointed. You're going to be angry. You're
right,
going to have all these different experiences and emotions, and that is okay.
yeah,
It's how we formulate healthy regulating systems to move through those
yeah,
emotions, through those experiences, so we don't avoid them,
mhm,
that we process them.
yeah,
We go through it. And I think that's also an opportunity for our kids to really learn these different techniques of how to process through life, right? Because they're not going to get it right. They're going to make mistakes.
Yes, exactly, and that takes the pressure off of us, and wherever this, like, cultural expectation was created that our responsibility as parents was to make sure that our kids never experience hard things, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, that is just it's crippling for us as individuals. It's mentally exhausting to even try to accomplish a snippet of that goal, right? And we can't grow through that, and it's not reality. And then we've got kids who might have come to us from hard places who've already experienced hard things that we ourselves could never comprehend because we hadn't been through those types of experiences. And so to lay that framework of how do we move through life understanding that life is hard and that this is the goal and that we can always make healthy choices to move towards this and that we're not stuck. I mean, I think that just gives a lot of hope in terms of attachment, but then just thriving as humans and as families.
Yeah. It takes us out of the rescuer role,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
takes us out of, hey, I can't rescue you from hurt, but what I can do, what I hope to do is give you tools to be able to process that and come out on the other side. And
Yeah.
what I hope I can do is formulate a safe relationship that you know I'm always here for you. I'm
So
always here for you to come alongside and help you process that.
so good.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, are we ready to move on to
Yep.
the second one?
All right, so anxious attachment. So, the anxious attachment is a very high view of others and a very low view of ourselves.
Mm,
So, when we are anxiously attached, we are going to feel like our needs don't matter, but everybody else's needs do matter. We need to be hyper aware and sensitive to everybody else's needs in order that we meet those needs so that we are needed in the relationship.
yeah.
Oftentimes this person is the quick fixer. They want to make sure that they can kind of come in and save the relationship or meet that need very, very quickly so that they are the good provider or they're the good friend or they're the good parent. Because they're anxious that that relationship is fragile.
Mm,
They're anxious that they might lose that relationship. And if they don't come in and meet that need immediately, they are no longer needed or valued.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. Okay.
that's a hard one.
That is a hard one. I mean, and let's talk about why it's unhealthy to stay in that.
Oh, it is. It's so hard. And oftentimes, so I'm going to tell myself I'm in disorganized. My default is disorganized attachment. So I'm either coming and responding from a way of anxious or avoidant, dependent on the situation.
I think
But
that's
we
you.
are, yeah. So when we are responding from this anxious attachment, it is very unhealthy because we are operating on a foundation of scarcity.
Mm,
Oftentimes, we can see foster adoptive families this play out with our relationships to bio parents.
okay.
That we are very anxious that if our child has a relationship or if we kind of open up, oh, where's our role then?
Yeah.
If they take over role as parent, where do I land up? It's a
Right.
scarcity mentality. Instead of saying there is room for so many people to love this child, to support this child, to be there to uplift and to surround. When we are operating out of anxious attachment, when we are trying to constantly insert ourselves and say, hey, I just have to be that one that cares for all of it. We are operating on a sense that it is our responsibility to fix all the relationships and meet all of the needs when reality that is not our role. That
Right.
is not our role.
Yeah. And that's exhausting too. I mean, that is where your day is just filled with that and you're not thriving as an individual and eventually you're going to implode.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we can see this, oftentimes we're going to have the friend text us of like, I'm having the worst day, da 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 da. And if our automatic default is to
Mhm.
text back of, I can bring this, I can do this, I can do this, this, and this. On the one hand, that can be just a really good friend being there and living life with your friend,
Right.
100%. But if that is your default because you are scared that if you don't come to your friend's rescue, that you might rupture the relationship,
Yeah.
then you are operating out of that anxious attachment.
Yeah.
And you are operating out of fear that if you do not meet that need, then that relationship is going to end.
Okay. two questions come to mind when you're talking about anxious attachment, and I'm with you. I think I'm in that kind of combo because I can do this a little bit. I just want to fix. But for somebody who loves someone with anxious attachment, how can you encourage and assure them that the relationship will not be ruptured?
Ooh, I think that's really good. I think one, letting that individual know, hey, you are loved, valued, and worthy just for being who you are.
Mm,
I don't need anything from you,
yeah,
but I want to be around you.
yeah,
I want you in my life,
yeah,
but I love you because of who you are, not because of what you do for me.
yeah,
I think in parenting, this can look as being very overprotective,
yeah.
as it can look to meeting our kids' needs when really they can do things for themselves.
Mm,
Instead of teaching them, like we want to come in and save them so they don't hurt, when
right.
maybe it's more age appropriate that they problem solve, they try to fix it first,
Yeah,
knowing that, hey, we're here if you need us,
yeah,
but we're going to let you fly a little bit. We're going to let you push into that, to use the tools that you have.
mm,
So I think a lot of it is if you are loving someone with an anxious attachment, one, you can reaffirm, like, hey, I love you because of who you are, not
yeah,
because of what you do for me.
right. That's so good. Okay, and then my second question with this particular attachment style, for those of us who function out of anxious attachment and we recognize that it's not healthy, what are some steps that we can take to move away from anxious attachment style?
It's a great question. This is going to go back to our mindfulness.
Okay.
This is why we practice mindfulness so that we can be aware of
Yeah.
the present situation,
Yeah.
how we're responding, and why.
Yeah.
So if my kiddo or if any kiddo comes home and they are struggling with homework, let's just kind of do a little example. If they're struggling with homework and you look at the homework and you're like, oh, this is absolutely absurd. You should not be asked to do this much. I'm going to email the teacher right now. Da, 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 da. And that is our really quick, reactive
Hmm.
response.
Yeah.
But if we back up and just pause and be mindful of saying, okay, tell me more about this homework assignment. What's going on? Well, and they kind of, lead us into it, then we can pause and say, okay, do I need to come in and save my kid, try to play that rescuer role? Or is my kid just having a bad day and wants to kind of complain about homework?
Well,
And because nobody likes homework, I don't like homework
right.
either.
Absolutely.
And so, really, mindfulness is that pause. Why are we responding the way we're responding? And so instead, to move towards a secure attachment, response, it would be, you know what? I don't like homework either. And I can tell you're frustrated. I get that.
Yeah.
So what do you need? Do you want to have a snack? Do you want to take a 15-minute break and go play a video game? What do you need before we kind of dive into this workload?
Yeah.
So it's a different way to respond, but it stems from mindfulness of how can we pause and reflect on where we are responding from.
If we want our kids to develop a lasting faith, we need to be teaching them about Jesus in the home. Parents are so important in raising kids to know, love, and follow Jesus, but it's hard to know where to start. There is a lot of amazing content out there, so Christian Parenting did all the hard work by sorting and filtering it all for you and put it together as a resource to help you navigate it all. Discipleship Simplified is a digital guide that includes some of the best articles, podcasts, and videos on topics like faith at home, reading the Bible, theology, prayer, church and worship, and character. You will also find conversation guides and discussion starters, even scripts to use with your kids. So if you've ever wondered, what do I say when my kid doesn't want to go to church? Discipleship Simplified has a script for that. Or if you want to know how to weave scripture and conversations about faith into your everyday life, Discipleship Simplified has ideas for that too. Since the guide is digital, you can download it straight to your phone or computer and search through resources whenever you need. I know this guide will be helpful every time you have a question about discipling your kids. You can go to www.cpgive.org to download your copy for just $5. That's the best of the best resources from top Christian parenting contributors for just $5. And you can go to cpgive.org or click the link in the description below. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Love that. That's so, so good and so practical.
Mhm.
That's not overwhelming at all. Just to be able to, I love that, the pause and the consider and ask the questions
Yeah.
and then move forward accordingly. Okay, avoidant attachment.
So, the avoiders. So they value independence. And I should not say they, I should say we. We value independence and self
Okay.
sufficiency. Needing someone is weakness. To the avoider, they are going to repress emotions in order to control them,
Mm,
as opposed to experience them and manage them. Oftentimes, avoiders have a very high view of self and a very low view of others. Like,
mm,
I got this. I can do it. Why would I need somebody else? Needing someone else's weakness,
right.
and I am not weak, right?
Yeah.
In parenting, oftentimes this form of parenting can be very emotionally distant, does not tolerate expressions of emotions. This is a kid of like, or this is the parent of like, hey, you're fine. Stop that.
Yeah.
Stop crying,
Yep.
which never works, right? Or you
Right.
shouldn't be angry. That doesn't help. So,
Good.
it's the parent that really wants the child to maintain control of their own emotions and be able to figure it out for themselves.
Mm.
Yeah, avoidant is hard. We do not like emotions, but
Yeah.
man, we can get a checklist done in a minute.
I'm telling you, and I will throw myself into that we category because I mean, the struggle bus, I'm on it,
Yeah.
probably driving that struggle bus. And it has just gotten worse the older I get.
Because the less out of control our lives feel. And
Yes.
during times of stress, dysregulation, and feeling a sense of out of control, these are going to be our default behaviors. This is where our responses are going to come from. And
Yes.
that's where we have to be mindful of just giving the pause of, why do I feel like this?
Right.
Why am I responding this way?
Hmm.
Is it healthy,
Yeah.
or do I need to pivot?
Yes. And I venture to say that we're probably the worst ones that beat up on ourselves more than any other attachment style because we have no tolerance for weakness or, anything that is not up to our standards, as you're talking about. And so, and then, am I correct in saying, because we're going to talk about this, our last episode in the series is going to be all about reactive parenting. So I don't want to lead too much into this, but dare I say we are the most reactive?
Yeah, I think so. In the sense of, because we can only avoid for so long and it will come out sideways.
Yeah.
So oftentimes this can be very explosive.
Mm,
you know so we have been avoiding our stress, avoiding our frustration, avoiding our disappointment,
yeah.
and then at the last, at a moment's notice, there's a straw that broke the camel's back, and then we kind of explode.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and we do have a very high expectations for ourselves.
Yeah.
We feel like we not only can but should be able to manage everything
Yes.
on everyone. And when our ducks get out of a row, that sense of loss of control is overwhelming.
Yes. Yes to that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm like, I feel like this is a dumb question because it's like, why is that not healthy? Well, we know why that's not healthy, but it might be good for you to give a little bit of insight into that.
Yeah, I think when we feel that it's isolating.
Yeah.
It's completely isolating for us to say we do not need others.
Yeah.
And I'll tell myself with my husband, I remember when we were dating, I'm a great avoider. I excel in this. I have a certificate of avoidant attachment.
Yes.
Um, and I remember telling him, "Oh, honey, I love you. I want to marry you. But I want you to know I don't need you, but I want you in my life."
Okay.
Me thinking, "How romantic." And my sweet, sweet fiance at the time, and now my husband, was like, "I don't think that's as nice as you think it is." And the moment in life when life happened and I realized, "No, I need you."
Yeah.
And the sense of, I felt so vulnerable and exposed,
Yeah.
and afraid to be left.
Mm.
And that's where that avoidant comes from.
Yeah.
The fear that if we don't do it, we will be left alone.
Yeah.
The relationships are so fragile
Yeah.
that if we do not do it all ourselves and take on all the responsibility and avoid any conflict,
Yep.
it will crumble.
Mm.
So it's a process.
It is a process. So I'm going to ask the same question that I did with our previous attachment style. For someone listening who loves an avoidant attachment style, how do you minister to them? How do you assure them that they don't have to spin all the plates and do it all themselves?
Mm. So everybody's going to be a little different, but I think for someone who is loving a person with an avoidant attachment, time is on your side.
Yeah.
Um, to give that person time to pause and reflect,
Yeah.
because as an avoider, we are going to say, I'm fine. And we truly think we're fine
Yes.
until we have a second to stop and reflect and really become in touch with where we are at emotionally, spiritually, and that time is sacred.
Yeah.
Um, Oftentimes we are so detached from our own needs
Yeah.
that it takes a minute to
Yeah.
be like, oh, I don't know why I'm responding that way.
Yeah.
I don't know, how I'm feeling. And so give them a minute. And when you see your kid avoiding being an avoider, to
Yeah.
say, I can do all these things and take care of all the people,
Right.
teaching them to pause,
Mm.
pausing with them.
Yeah.
It's really, they're going to learn by our example.
Yes.
Don't push them to talk, but you can just be present with them.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. And that goes back to what we talked about in episode 1 about being unhurried
Yeah.
and being willing to take that time and being willing to play the long game with those of us who sometimes it takes a while for us to get it. You know?
And you know what? And I love what we said at the top of the episode is it's never too late. It's
Yeah.
never too late. We are constantly in the state of growth and development,
Right.
and it's a beautiful journey.
Yeah.
That's life. Like that's just life.
Yeah, and life has a way of humbling you. And so for those of us who really we camp out or we default into this attachment style, I mean, it does catch up. And I think a lot of times it's the grace of God that allows things to catch up with us so that we can become teachable and mindful as we're talking about and understanding those defaults. And I mean, sin struggle for me because I'm like, I need to live every day knowing that Jesus is in control, not me. Right.
Mhm.
But for some reason, I have just fallen into this mindset of the go-getter and the doer and God has gifted us in ways where we can do a lot, but it's still not healthy to camp out primarily in that, right?
Yeah, and I think when we were talking about, because there's that whole spiritual attachment too to God, that's a
Yeah.
whole nother podcast. But
Yes.
I think, it comes out in the sense of I have to earn God's love and mercy and grace.
Right.
And if
That's
I
right.
don't hustle, I'm not good enough to be accepted. I'm not good enough to receive God's grace.
Yes.
Mhm.
That mic drop.
Down.
Right there. I mean, that's it. You're so, so right. And then you had mentioned you fall into this last category, and I think I'm right there with you. So let's unpack our last attachment style.
So the disorganized, this attachment style it's kind of a combo of the avoidant and the anxious. And here it's a combination because depending on the situation is going to depend on how you respond. So your response is going to be different all the time. So
Mhm.
oftentimes parents are very unpredictable.
Right.
Our responses are unpredictable because are we responding out of our anxious attachment or responding out of our avoidant attachment?
Right.
There's this fear of intimacy and yet also craves the intimacy.
Yes.
It's kind of this tug of war. It finds it very difficult to trust other people, but can really be very vulnerable and sometimes overshare
Mm.
in relationships. Again, because on the one hand, you're avoidant and you don't want to trust, but on the other hand, you're anxious. So you overshare to try to get people to like you. um, they can, we can appear moody because our behavior and our responses are unpredictable. So in parenting, we can really cause a lot of stress with our kids because our kids do not know how we are going to respond based on when they ask for their need, something that they need, or when they're sad, or when they're angry at us. Because we're unpredictable, that
Yeah.
can cause a lot of tension in that relationship
Mm,
because they don't know what to expect.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, check that one for
And
me.
I think we need to see these attachment styles as very fluid. Like
Yeah.
we can kind of go in and out of them, and that's where that whole mindfulness plays into it. And so I don't think you have to say, "Oh, I don't." You can resonate with a lot of them, with all of
Yes,
them, right?
for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's a really great point, that idea of it being fluid because you do, and it depends on, I mean, for women, our hormonal, it depends on our blood sugar, it depends on hydration, it depends on rest, it depends on stress levels, it depends on all these different things, and that's true for all of us, our kids and our husbands as well.
yeah. And I think oftentimes for men, it's a little trickier because I think our society has taught men that emotions are a women's game,
Mm,
and to be very detached from emotions because they are weakness. And so I think sometimes men have a very hard time identifying their attachment styles, really understanding where they're responding from because it's a really new skill.
that's good.
I've worked with so many fathers who often come to me and be like, "What do you mean? What am I feeling?"
Mm,
And are genuinely asking that question like, "I don't understand. I'm either angry or I'm not."
yeah.
And so I think that if that is you, one, you're not alone, but two, okay, we got some work to do to
Yeah.
really get back in touch with you because honestly, God created all of us with all of these different emotions, feelings, and responses to really cue us into what we need and how others can help us meet that need and how we can also meet that need depending on the situation.
That is so good, Kelly. And that is so helpful for us to kind of dive in and really understand each one, understanding that you're talking about them being fluid. And so, with that, let's wrap up this conversation with identifying our attachment style and maybe even how do we go about that, I guess, as we're talking about being mindful, we're talking about being reflective in this series, and which is so, so helpful. I think and I was even tempted when you first taught this at CAFO. I was like wanting to beat up on myself. I was kind of drowning in it a little bit, but yet wanting to learn more and understand more. So, what's a healthy approach, I guess, both as an individual and then sitting together as a family and maybe starting to unpack this a little bit as a springboard
Mm.
to we've learned this, we want to apply it, we want to do better. Where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start? One, I think, for me, it's starting from a place of how does God see me? And I
Yeah,
love going back to Genesis, 1, where it says, God created us and called us good.
yeah,
So let's have grace and mercy with ourselves. Let's be gentle with ourselves and gracious with ourselves.
that's good.
Um, and two, I think information is power. And so a great basic level place to start is go to attachmentproject.com. It has a lot of information on the different attachment styles. It has a very quick, like 3-minute quiz that you can take to see kind of what your attachment style is. Um, and start from there. And also, as you're learning, learn out loud with your kids.
Mm,
Learn out loud and say, you can say, I am frustrated and I want to go be alone, but you know what? I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to breathe for a second. I'm going to have a snack. And then I want to reconnect with you and talk about that.
mm,
And so
love that.
make learning a journey and make it a family journey that you're
Great.
not going to always get right. Um, and that's okay. No
Yeah.
matter when we get it right or when we get it wrong, we can always come back and repair the relationship. And we're still in it together. Families stick together.
That's right. I love that idea of it being a family journey. That's amazing because, I mean, regardless of the size of your family, you're dealing with more than one person. And so that's where work needs to be done
Yep.
when there is a family unit. And so when you understand that collectively, that it is a team effort and that it is something that you're learning and growing in together. That's really, really encouraging. Kelly, I think this is a great place for us to land in this conversation. And listeners, we're going to come back next week with our final episode in this series where we're going to dive a little bit more into reactive parenting. That one's going to be great. Thank you so much for being here for this episode.
Thanks for having me.